I'm going to tell you a story. Now, I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast, but one of my favorite game shows, I'd say my favorite game show, the one that got me involved in this type of TV that helped me realize I was a fan of game shows, this going way back, is Press Your Luck. It's the show with the whammy. And it was on in reruns all throughout the early 90s. And I was a 4 or 5 year old big-headed kid sitting at home with his mom watching TV while my dad was at work. And I loved Press Your Luck. I would watch it all the time. And looking back on it, I realized that the show had all the base elements of what a kid would want on TV. It was lights, neon lights, and it was colors, and it was big swirling neon and people screaming and laughing and clapping. And it was just everything that I wanted in a TV show. Plus, there was a cartoon baked into it. There was when you lost your money, the whammy would come out and do something silly. It was a funny little cartoon baked into a game show. How could a kid not love that? And I loved it. And I, to this day, have incredibly fond feelings for Press Your Luck. It is a show that is very near and dear to my heart, and I love it. I don't know how else to describe how much I care for this show. A friend of mine this week alerted me to an eBay auction. The auction was consistent of some set pieces from Press Your Luck. So in case anyone's not familiar with the basic mechanics of the show, essentially there's a big board with a light bouncing around it. You hit your button, stop the light. You win whatever the light stops on, whether it's money or a prize, you get that. If it's a whammy, you lose all your money. And he comes out and does a dance and plays a little cartoon. Now, the board for the show was consistent of 18 projection screens, each with a slide projector behind it. And the projectors contained these rotating drums that had slides with the dollar amounts or the pictures of the prizes that you might win, or little pictures of the whammy. And watching it on TV, you get the illusion of this massive, ever-changing game board because the dollar amounts would fade into each other as the light bounced around. And it was hard to sort of pin down where a prize was because every 4 bounces of that light, all the prizes would change. And that was all the slide projectors changing to the next slide. So this auction consisted of some of those slides, some of the original slides that were used on Press Your Luck. And there was a bunch with different dollar amounts, and there was one of a prize, like a trip to San Diego, and had the old kind of prize iconography that they used to use on the show. And there was one with a whammy on it. And I was immediately fascinated. And it turned out that they were being sold for what I would consider to be a scandalous amount of money. It was so low. And I almost instinctively clicked buy it now and bought myself one. And 3 days later, it came in the mail. It came in a media mail box, and it was bubble wrapped and taped to the inside of the box so it wouldn't move around. And I came home from work, and I hadn't felt like this in so long. It was like Christmas. I opened up the box, and there it was. It was a slide, back in the day when you get like a negative, it was a square slide with a picture of what was in that square. In this case, it was $500. So it was the big, bold 500 with the stacks of coins in the back. And it was blue, a blue background. I was so incredibly tickled by owning a piece of this show that I love so much. And I wanted to celebrate, so I watched an episode of Press Your Luck. And this is, I guess maybe movie fans or sports fans may have a similar phenomenon in their world, but watching a TV show while you own a piece of that show is very surreal. It was surreal to watch Press Your Luck and to watch the squares change and to watch the $500 fade in and out and to see that I owned the element that would make that happen. It was in my hand. something about this show from Hollywood, this faraway land. It's so far from where I grew up in Connecticut. I just never thought I would ever see any real element of that show in person. Uh, and now I had it, and I was watching the show, and it was the most incredible, the most exciting game of that show I had ever seen. At one point, at the very end, this contestant had 8 spins that they had to take. So you can play or you can pass your spins, meaning that the person whose spins, you know, the person who gets your spins has to take them. They're obligated to take them, even if they hit a whammy. They have to take them, and then once they hit a whammy, they don't have to. So anyway, this guy got past 8 spins. So he's up to about $20,000. And every spin of this board, he hits the button and he wins something. $1,200, $1,500, a trip to the Poconos. And every spin that goes by, the host, Peter Tamarkin, who I love, rest in peace, he is just getting more and more amped up. And the audience is, you could see them in the background standing to their feet. This guy is screaming. The guy in the middle is cursing this guy on the left who keeps getting prize after prize after prize after cash, cursing him, telling him to get a whammy, telling him he can't do it forever. He literally says those words to him. You can't avoid him forever. The sense of competitiveness that I felt watching this show, it was unbelievable. And to anyone listening who knows how much I love this kind of stuff, it might feel sort of passé that I'm saying this because clearly it's a game show and I love that kind of stuff and it's an exciting show. But something about that whole vibe, watching this show that I grew up with while I was holding a piece of the set, made me, for the first time in a really long time, feel like less of a historian or researcher or interviewer or podcaster and more of a fan. Good Lord, this is why I love this kind of TV. And it just made me feel like that kid again. And remembering what it was like to just be somebody who loved that kind of TV, I'm not gonna lie, maybe a little emotional. And so it was just an unbelievable experience, and it really brought me back to where all this stuff originated. So this week, my guests happened to reschedule on me. I had 2 guests scheduled. I record on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I edit Thursday night and try to have it ready for Saturday morning. And it just wasn't in the cards this week. The 2 people that I was scheduled to talk to had things going on. They had to reschedule, and I am so low stress about this podcast. It is no problem. We can reschedule anytime. And just having gotten over RSV a couple weeks ago, I didn't have I like to have an episode in reserve, and I just didn't have it. Just didn't have the vocal stamina over the past couple weeks to record more than I needed to. And so what I'm going to do instead is take this weekend and enjoy the things that I enjoy as not a content creator, not a producer, not a podcaster, but as a fan. I want to take some time to remember what it's like to be a game show fan without the responsibility of work, without work entering into it. And so I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. What I'm going to do is play for you an interview I recorded about 5 years ago with a man named Wayne Cox. Wayne is a broadcaster from Canada, and he's had several jobs in broadcasting. Most recently, he was the narrator of a documentary series called The Search for Canada's Game Shows. And it was a beautifully well done documentary on the history of this type of TV as it relates to Canadian television. Their history when it comes to game shows is a lot different than ours, and it's equally as fascinating. I have a lot of friends who are involved in it. Adam Needov, who is a researcher for the Strong Museum, my buddy Ryan Vickers, who is my Canadian Alex Trebek counterpart, who's been on this show a couple times. We're all involved with it. And in celebration of the then current release of that documentary, I talked to Wayne, and I got to talk to him about his broadcasting career, hosting Talk About, how he feels about Canadian game shows in general. We got to kind of shoot the breeze about that type of TV, and turns out he is a fan just like us. So while I go remember what it's like to be a game show fan, I want to leave you with this interview that I recorded with Wayne Cox in 2020. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy.
Tell us about yourself, would you?
Tell us something about you.
For any new viewers, won't you tell us again about yourself?
We've met before, but let's meet again. Tell us about
What
yourself.
else can you tell us about yourself?
Perhaps you'd fill us in again and tell us about yourself.
So the search for Canada's game shows, I saw the first 2 episodes already. I think everybody did a phenomenal job, including you. It's really, really entertaining. And I noticed that when I first heard about the documentary, I noticed that there was a huge push to get people to give tapes, if they have any tapes of any shows that they've recorded, anything they've been on, that they could use that. Now, it seems like in America, game shows are rerun all the time. There doesn't seem to be that kind of market for game show reruns in Canada. And I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate, but I know that I don't know that I've seen too many game show reruns, especially of some of the older stuff, from the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah, I don't know really why that is. I don't know if the producers aren't pushing it as much, or if there's no spot on any of our networks. I don't know. But I know one thing we were really concerned about was on Talk About anyway, was the content, and aside from the fashion, which you can always laugh at, but sometimes the content, like, yeah, if a topic was a person, the person's passed away, and there's no mention that it was the person's dad, to have those things running, I think some people were kind of leery of that. That's all.
Right. And I think that's even the case today. I know, more recently where, when cities get hit by hurricanes or storms or violence, and the Price is Right happens to give away a trip to the city in the same week, there's this scramble to sort of replace it or apologize. Now, has that ever happened on Talk About?
Did it ever happen?
Right.
I don't think so. But we did have some of the topics on Talk About were they were people, and I guess now that it's going to rerun here in Canada, I guess we'll just sit back and see how many people involved in the puzzles are still with us. The thing was, if the name comes up and the person has passed away, it kind of behooves the hosts to mention that, not just to let it pass by. But I guess that comes with the territory, I guess.
Right. Now, you were hosting a talk show around 1988 on CJOR around the time you got the job on Talk About. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, radio talk show. Yeah, I only did that for a year, and then they they changed formats. They went from talk radio to classic rock and roll. So that kind of let the whole bunch of us out.
Now, what kind of talk, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of talk show was it? Was it a public service type of thing? Were you talking to government officials? Was it celebrities?
Yeah, everybody. It's one of those things. It's one of those talk shows that you have guests, or you get guests on the phone, or you have people phone in and comment on things. Just a regular, day-to-day radio talk show. There's no every day was different, and there was no real, focus to it. No, no political slant or anything. It was just whatever happens from day to day.
Right. And in the late 80s, that type of talk show seemed to be uh, pretty popular because you had people like Tom Snyder and Larry King who were doing things all over North America. Their radio show was broadcast coast to coast. So that seems to have been a popular format, especially around then. And I think there's even an audience for it now, with the proliferation of podcasts and things like that. Now, how did you end up with the job on Talk About? How did that come about?
Well, let's see. I had been doing television before, the talk show and things like that, and then I was into radio. But I was always, being sent out on auditions from my agent for commercials or whatever happened to come up. And this game show just happened to come up, and I went into the audition and not really knowing really how to play the game. It was, I got sort of a script for it and went in and ran through it a couple of times. And Mark Maxwell Smith, the creator, he was there, and he liked what he saw, and that was it. Then all of a sudden we're in production.
Mark Maxwell Smith is a massively creative guy. I know that he had a hand in the supermarket sweep of the 90s, and he did a lot of writing for a show called The Crosswits, which was like a crossword type thing that he did for a few years. And he was I remember from watching his work that he's just a very creative sort of guy. And I was pleasantly surprised to learn that he was the mind behind Talk About, because again, and like I mentioned in one of my emails, Talk About is a very prominent part of my childhood. And I think I watched it even before I realized what it was about. A lot of game shows just have that visual quality, just have that flash and that, that visual quality that endears, even kids to it. Now, Talk About, I would imagine, is the show you're probably most remembered for. Do you have a lot of people that ask you about Talk About?
Oh yeah, I still have people come up and say they were on the show, because it was shot. I'm still in the Vancouver area, and it was shot here in Vancouver at the CBC studios, and it was a co-production with D.L. Taffner out of New York City, and it was syndicated on all the Fox owned and operated stations in the U.S., and it went across on CBC as a network show here. So people, even though it's 30 years ago, people still come up and say, I was a contestant with you, and how much fun they had. And Canadian game shows have always, the budgets haven't been all that big. And so as a result, some of the, the prizing couldn't really keep up with U.S. game shows as far as prizes were concerned. But the game was so sound. As you mentioned, he's such a genius when it comes to creativity, and especially the game show business, because he had been in it for so long. And it was his job to try and create game shows for D.L. Taffner, and he came up with Talk About, and they looked for a co-producer, and the co-production company they found was the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And I think mostly as far as the Canadian game shows go and the prizing, as I say, we just don't have the big budgets that they have with network television in the U.S.
Right. And I think that, like you said, if the game is sound enough, it doesn't really matter what you're giving away. We prove that in America with things like What's My Line, where, a stranger goes up and celebrities guess what they do for a living, and the maximum prize is $50. That show was on for 2 decades, and the prize, never really changed. So, and I think that even after the scandals in the 50s, there began to, this shift away from big prizes and a shift towards putting the game first. That I think that's really where that started. And on the subject of the scandals, and I'm I'm not sure how much you yourself have learned about the history of Canadian game shows in the process of making this documentary, but one of the interesting things I noticed was, as somebody who has been watching this type of television my whole life in America, the story of Jack Barry and Dan Enright, you know, through the movie Quiz Show and through the, various documentaries that have been made about that particular time in television, the story here goes that they were caught rigging shows and they went away for a while, and then they came back in the 70s with things like The Joker's Wild and Tic-Tac-Toe, and it was very interesting for me to hear the other side of that story and to hear how much they did for this segment of broadcasting in Canada. And I just thought that that was very interesting. Now, I'm not sure, had you had any experience with Jack Barry or Dan Enright?
No, I haven't, but I've heard so many stories. Well, one from Mark Maxwell Smith because he worked with them in the U.S. And when I was doing auditions for various game shows, I would do them in Los Angeles, and I ran into all kinds of people, of course, who are in the game show business, and the stories that they would tell were fascinating. But one of the stories I'm sure I heard about uh, Enright was in the days that yeah, they were giving the answers to the questions. Um, Really, I don't think there were any regulations against that. Really, it was prior to the clampdown on that kind of thing. So what they were actually trying to do is make an exciting and entertaining show. And if you can have a guy stick around that everybody really likes as a contestant, hey, that's great. That's entertainment. So it wasn't until that I guess somebody blew the whistle and said that you can't be doing that. Up until that point, I'm not sure if it was really cast in stone that you couldn't. I may be wrong about that, but I'm thinking that's the story I heard way back when.
I think they had mentioned that in the documentary too, that it was almost a thing that nobody really thought to do. And going back to how common that practice was at that period of time, they were just creating entertainment, and I think that that's what it was seen as, that they were just creating good television. And a lot of people also forget that the sponsors had such a huge role in dictating what happened on these shows. It's so much different than it is today, where by comparison, producers have a lot more creative license in terms of what they're doing with their shows. I mean, if you watch the movie Quiz Show, Geritol, their sponsor, just told them what to do, where to go, who to give the answers to, who to get rid of. So I think that there are a lot of influences there that don't normally get discussed. But I thought it was interesting just to hear how much Barry and Enright had a hand in creating and helping to create a whole league of game show producers in Canada.
Yeah, yeah, that was it's an interesting aspect to it too, and I think during that scandal time, that was before they had the standards and practices department that looked into all these kind of things. I can remember working on well, it was I think it was even talked about. We had a situation I couldn't be in contact with the contestants. The contestants couldn't be in contact with anyone on the staff. They they were chaperoned by a person on the staff, but that was to make sure no one was in contact with them, so they wouldn't find out what the puzzles were about, so they couldn't, preload their imagination as to what some of the answers might be, and even to go to the washroom. I mean, they were escorted there and back, so they wouldn't have any contact with anyone on the show. So it got very very serious, and I think that just came out of the game show scandal. And the fact that that Barry and Enright did come north, I think that it was a big shot in the arm for all the producers and the production companies here in Canada to get our own industry going as far as game shows were concerned.
Now, what were some of your favorite Canadian game shows that American audiences may not have heard of?
Was Bumper Stumpers down there?
We had Bumper Stumpers. That was in reruns, I think, on like the USA Network, and then it was on Game Show Network for a while. I loved that show.
Yeah, I thought that was really creative. Now, I may be wrong. You'd have to check with him, but I have a feeling that that Mark Maxwell Smith was somehow involved in that show. I may be wrong, but I can remember watching that from time to time, and yeah, I just thought it was you stare at those license plates and you just say, you know, try and figure this one out, and that was kind of a fun show. I like that one, but most of the game shows here ran during the day, and so I always knew that like, if someone said, "Hey, been watching your show," I said, "Oh, you feeling better now?" Because I figured anyone who's watching daytime TV is either unemployed or they're sick and bad.
Right. It's popular if you have a communicable illness. That's a very popular form of entertainment, right?
Yeah. Unless it was, Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune that went on forever and ever and ever, nighttime versions. Yeah, most of them ran during the day, so I didn't get a chance to see a whole lot of them, but I do remember, for sure, I remember Bumper Stumpers.
Now, from a true Canadian's point of view, Alex Trebek is considered an American institution. Is he as respected, if not more respected, in Canada than he is in the United States?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We take, great pride in always mentioning, if anyone cares to ask, that yeah, he came from Canada. Now I'm not sure if Alex still has his Canadian citizenship. I'm not sure on that, but certainly his ties to Canada are still strong. I think it was the University of Ottawa, was it, that he went to, that he it was his alma mater. Anyway, he keeps in contact with them and fundraising events and things like that. But no, we're very proud. He's one of ours. And look at Monty Hall. There's another Canadian game show host. We had a thing. There's a magazine here in Canada. It's called well, I don't know if it's still going. Saturday Night. And what it did, a story, a huge story on Canadian game shows, and this was I don't know what year this was, but it was quite a while ago, and they got together a whole bunch of the Canadian game show hosts, flew them to Los Angeles, and did a photo shoot and a little a story on all of us, and it included Alex Trebek and Monty Hall. They came out for the big shoot, and we had a great time. We sat around and he just compared notes and compared who we knew and who we worked with, and it was really a fun thing. It was kind of a weekend in Los Angeles photo shoot. And, no, we've always been really proud of Alex and also Monty Hall too.
Absolutely. Oh, there are so many good hosts that come from Canada. You have Alex Trebek, you have Monty Hall, you have Jim Perry, who did Definition, and Alan Thicke. Even in the new school, Howie Mandel was shock of the year becoming a game show host, but he fell into the role so beautifully. There's really just such a font of talent in Canada.
He did a great job on that. How he did, and I wish he was still doing it, actually, because he had so much. It looked like he had so much fun doing that show.
Right. Because I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to be a game show host, it does require getting into a bit of a character, and audiences are perceptive in that they can tell if you're totally phoning it in or totally faking it. But it does require that certain, you know, higher energy, to be on television. And I thought he did a great job on that. Now you were a weatherman totally for in total for about 20 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I just finished doing that. Yeah, that came at the end. Not quite the end. When I was freelancing and doing just about everything, radio, TV. I used to fill in for one of the local weathermen on TV here, and then I got into game shows, and then talk shows and all that kind of thing, and then the end of I've retired now, but at the end of my career, yeah, it was about 20 years, and being a TV weatherman, and yeah, it was good. Partly cloudy with a few showers. How can you go wrong?
Beautiful. It sounds good to me. Now, what are some of the skills that are transferable between the world of meteorology and the world of game show hosting? Why are weathermen such good hosts?
Gee, I don't know. Well, there's for the last number of years, there's been a trend, and especially in the U.S., of TV weathermen being meteorologists, and for the longest time, it would just be a guy who would tell you if it's going to rain or not. There was no science behind it. It was more a personality thing on the newscast, and so it's just I don't know how unless you're in a place where you get hurricanes and tornadoes and killer snowstorms. You're either going to get wet or you're going to get sunburned. I mean, it's not really that important most of the time. So I think, newscasts, they tended to go to people who could kind of, be more of a personality than an expert. And I think that's where, you could find, like a weatherman could be a game show. Well, oh, help me. Pat Sajak.
Pat Sajak.
He was a weatherman.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Los Angeles, right? And before he took over with Wheel, and so there's a prime example. And I think it's just, what do you need to know to be a weatherman in Los Angeles? Not much. Sunny, 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 right?
Right.
But the way you say it is the way you get the message across. And, that Pat was just and he is just a real likable guy. And so I think that the two things, they do go together, strangely enough. But the whole game thing is a little more, I think it's trickier than a lot of people think. There's a whole lot of mental gymnastics going on as you're playing the game and and dealing with the contestants. You're also dealing with the clock. You have to know, how much time each segment is going to be able to have. And you got to get in, you got to get out. And for a lot of games, you have to have the game over in the 22 minutes that you have. So there's a lot of juggling, especially with the clock. And live TV, like a newscast, and you've got 3.5 minutes to get the weather in there. You got to get everything in 3.5 minutes. So the two things kind of go together. You can draw some skills from either side.
Sure. And I wonder if it doesn't have a lot to do with the idea of conveying information in a warm and inviting sort of way. I think that that's one of the skills that game show hosting and being a weatherman maybe have in common.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing in game shows, because unless you're doing like a celebrity version of a game, the people playing the games really are just people off the street. I mean, they aren't used to being in front of the cameras. They're not used to being under the lights and under the pressure of the time clock and things. So you got to be their friend. You have to come across as being friendly and put them at ease mostly, because if you put them at ease, you're going to get a better show.
Oh, absolutely. And it comes across so clearly if a contestant is nervous or if they're excited to be there and into the game, again, viewers are so perceptive, I think. Now, have you ever
And as a host, as a host, you recognize that too. And the quicker you can put them at ease, then the more fun everybody's going to have.
Absolutely, I agree. Now, have you ever searched for yourself on YouTube?
Yeah, just to see what clips there might be of anything. Yeah.
How crazy is that feeling to see yourself on tape from, however many years ago?
Yeah. Well, it certainly turns back the hands of time, doesn't it? Because even with like talk about that's 30 years ago, and then I don't know. I don't think there's anything. I haven't really looked, but the first game show I did was Second Honeymoon, which was a delightful show in that it took the greed out of game shows. It was based on sort of the same type of show as Newlywed Game, where you had to match answers. You know, you ask a question, you get an answer. When the other person's not there, they come back out, and if they match, they get a point.
Right.
So what the deal was, it was mom and dad and the kids, and so when mom and dad could match an answer the kids gave, they got a point. Blah blah blah. You get to the end of the show, and the winner wins a second honeymoon for mom and dad. So the kids didn't really win the prize. They were trying to win a prize for mom and dad. And so it was a terrific show, as far as taking, if someone's saying, oh, look at this greedy guy's going after a car. Well, no, the kids were trying to help out mom and dad. And for a lot of the cases, mom and dad never had a first honeymoon. So it was, and they were terrific prizes too. They were like trips to Hong Kong and trips to Australia. And that was a Wink Martindale production.
Oh, you know what? And I think going back to what we were talking about, I think Bumper Stumpers was as well, because I remember hearing a story of Wing Martindale driving in Beverly Hills and seeing all these personalized license plates on cars as he went by, and thinking that would be a great kind of hook for a game show.
Yeah, you're probably right. Got mixed up Mark Maxwell Smith with Wink Martindale. Shame on me.
Oh well, you know what? I'm sure
there was another one.
Yeah,
there was another one. Maybe I'm getting confused with. Was Headline Hunters. I think that might have been Mark's, but then again, you have to do research.
Right. I'll do. Yeah, more conclusive research is needed there. I take it, but that's okay. Let me see. I have a whole. I've been writing questions for weeks. I've been so excited to talk to you. Have you seen this clip of Family Feud Canada that's kind of gone viral in the past couple days?
Oh, the chicken one.
Oh yeah,
Popeye chicken.
That's it. I was wondering if you had caught up on that. I read today that Popeyes gave her $10,000 in free chicken.
Yeah, that one went right over my head when I first saw that clip with a woman. What Popeye's favorite food, and she says chicken. Everyone was saying, well, spinach, of course, but if you don't know Popeye, the cartoon guy from a million years ago, the only Popeye she knew was Popeye with the chicken chain.
Right.
So it made perfect sense to her. And now that I link the two things up, now I understand. I say, oh, of course, that's why she said it. It's the Popeye chicken, fast food chain. That was very funny. Yeah.
Well, it totally makes sense. And I think it was just the confidence with which she gave this answer that just kind of brought it home. Well, that has to be it. I'm going to hit the button. We won it because it is chicken. But I think as long as game shows still provide moments like that, the genre isn't going away. And I think that even like stand-up comedy is an art form that sort of ebbs and flows. It gets popular and less popular, more popular, and it's very popular now. I think game shows work the same way.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, and it's you look at the longevity of Wheel and Jeopardy, and The Price is Right. There's another one. I mean, they've been going for a million years, and it's just great entertainment for people.
Right. Now, you did a show called Acting Crazy, which I guess was a charades type show. I wasn't very familiar with it. That wasn't something that ran in my area. What was the premise of Acting Crazy? It was based on charades.
Based on charades and two teams, and each team had. I'm trying to think. It was two. I think it might have been two, like house players, like people that were there all the time. They were our staff who played the game, and then a contestant, and then a celebrity. And they would all take turns in doing charades for their team, and the faster their team could come up with the answer to the charade, the more points they got, or the less points they got, and the one with the less points wins, right? So it went back and forth from one team to the other team until we hit a winner, and it was lots of fun. Joanne Worley was one of the celebrities, and Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees, and Jimmy, JJ, Dynamite Walker. He was one of them, and we had lots of them, and it was a lot of fun because it was charades, and that if you're a good charades player, and the people we had as our house members were very good. A couple of them were improv guys, and there were two sisters who played charades all the time at home when they were kids. That was their family game, and they came and auditioned to be, our house players, and we thought they were terrific. So they were on every show just about, and then the contestant would win a prize, and that was the end of that. But it was just basic charades, and we just try and make it a lot of fun, and usually it was.
Right. And how long did that show last?
Oh, I think we did a couple of years, and then took a couple of years off, and then did another years. So they probably got about maybe 3-4 years in the can. But I don't know. It went across Canada, but I don't think it ever was syndicated through the U.S. markets.
Right. Yeah, we had, I think there were all kinds of attempts at bringing charades to TV here. They had something called Body Language, which I used to watch when I was much younger, and they kind of had, they threw word puzzles in there, and, but charades itself is such a natural for television. If you want to watch a game being played, I mean, talk about a play along factor,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's so big too on all the games. Is that play along ability, if that's a word?
It is now.
Well, we knew we knew Talk About was going to be successful because in the editing process, not that you can edit, the end result of the game, but if there happened to be a technical glitch that all of a sudden had to be fixed up, we would see that the editors were playing along with the game, and when you can get the technical people to be playing along, because usually they're fairly cynical about most things, if you can get them to play along, you figure, well, I think maybe we got something here, and that's what happened with Talk About.
Right. Oh, and it's massively fun to play along with, and again, I think that had a huge hand in it, in its success. What are you up to now? Are you enjoying retirement? How long have you been retired?
I think it's about 5 or 6 years now, and loving every minute of it. Yeah. As mentioned, we have a place in Phoenix that we get to every so often, and also have a summer place on a lake in the interior, and we get to that in the summer. And in between times, it's kind of a little bit of golf here and there, and doing whatever I want, whenever I want to do it. It's perfect.
Sounds fulfilling as hell to me. It sounds great. Well, listen, Wayne,
I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky because my wife still works, so we can still eat. You see.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Food is always a plus. I know that more than anybody. Wayne, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. I want to thank you for all 180 episodes of Talk About, which I'm sure I've seen from ages of 5 to 8, and it was one of my favorite shows. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for all the years of entertainment. Good luck with the documentary launch, and that launches on Thursday, doesn't it?
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah, Thursday night. And I think anybody who is fortunate enough to see it is in for a lot of entertainment. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And thank you for all your work on that.
Well, thanks for your interest, Christian, and thanks for watching, and it's been great talking with you.
Absolutely. Great talking with you as well. Have a good night, Wayne. Thank you.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Tell Us About Yourself. Conversations with Game Show Contestants is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Christian Carrion, from my studio in beautiful downtown Lancaster City, Pennsylvania. Co-executive producer Cory Anotado. Researcher Chuck Donegan. This has been a production of BuzzerBlog, the most popular game show website in the world, in partnership with the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. For more information, visit museumofplay.org. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Christian Carrion. Good night.
Tell Us About Yourself is sponsored by bonusround.ca, streaming Canada's classic game shows on demand. Dive into the golden age of television with thousands of episodes of Canadian series that defined an era from anywhere in the world, all for just $1.99 a month. From iconic shows like Let's Make a Deal and Definition to cult classics like Bumper Stumpers and The Mad Dash, bonusround.ca brings you timeless entertainment that's fun, enlightening, and affordable. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, relive the magic of Canadian television history. Subscribe now at bonusround.ca for $1.99, download the free Bonus Round app on iOS, Android, and Roku, and turn every night into Game Show Night. By Game Show Forensics. In a world where game show imperfections go unchecked, where judgment calls are questionable, and where clocks tick with unsynced inaccuracy, there is but one elite force to investigate it all. Armed with the latest in atomic electromagnetometer and gas chromatography mass spectrometry technology, Game Show Forensics is always on the case. Join Robert McKee and his elite squad of game show scientists as they dive headfirst into the most absurd depths possible at GameShowForensics.com. Adult discretion is advised. And by The Inn at Leola Village. Nestled in the heart of picturesque Pennsylvania, the Inn at Leola Village is a sanctuary of luxury and relaxation. Indulge in the timeless beauty of their historic suites, each meticulously designed to transport you to a bygone era of elegance and grace. Experience the culinary delights of their award-winning Italian restaurant, where every dish is a masterpiece crafted from the finest local ingredients. From romantic getaways to corporate retreats, the Inn at Leola Village offers a haven for every occasion. Unwind at the spa, stroll through the lush gardens, and let the stress of everyday life melt away. Make your reservation today at theinnatleolavillage.com or call the front desk at area code 717-656-7002. The Inn at Leola Village, an oasis of luxury.